Last time we introduced this sutra. In the book here, it is called the smaller Sukhavativyuha Sutra. We explained the meaning of Sukhavativyuha. Sukhavati means the realm of bliss or the land of happiness, and Vyuha means magnificent display. So this is the sutra on magnificent display of the land of bliss. And if we use conventional common English, it's just like heaven. We call it, some people call it heaven. We're going to heaven. So the content of this sutra has some similarity to the concept of going to heaven after death. And this sutra has some similarity with that concept that after death, then we'll be reborn again in heaven. But I think the major differences are in this sutra, it talks in detail as to how to get there. Not just based on faith alone. Just based on faith alone, you want to go to heaven and you can go there after death. It's not that simple. You really have to have some conditions. Some conditions have to be mature for you to go to heaven. It contains all the details. In the concept of heaven, the Buddhist teaching contains three main sutras. The first one is the sutra on Amitabha Buddha. In the Chinese language is佛说阿弥陀经, the sutra on Amitabha Buddha. It is translated as the smaller Sukhavativyuha by Max Muller. Max Muller translated this sutra from Sanskrit, not from Chinese, from Sanskrit. That goes on to prove that the sutra was real, authentic sutra, because at one source, Max Muller, a German scholar, translated directly from Sanskrit. And on the other hand, there was this佛说阿弥陀经, the sutra on Amitabha Buddha, translated from Sanskrit into Chinese by Kumarajiva. So that means it's a true, authentic sutra. So now, but what you've got to remember is there are three very important major sutras on this concept of land of bliss, or the concept of heaven. The first one is a sutra on Amitabha Buddha, which in here, Max Muller translated it as the smaller Sukhavativyuha, the smaller. There's also the larger, but we'll mention it later. The first one, the sutra on Amitabha Buddha, which is similar to this one that we're talking about. The second one is the sutra of visualization of the Buddha of infinite life, and translated as the longer Sukhavativyuha Sutra, the longer. The second one is the sutra of visualization of the Buddha of infinite life. In the Chinese language is Guan Wuliang Shou Jing. Guan Wuliang Shou Jing. Guan, that means visualize. Wuliang Shou is infinite life. So Guan Wuliang Shou Jing. Max Muller translated it as the Sutra of Visualization of the Buddha of Immeasurable Length of Life, or he called it the longer Sukhavativyuha Sutra. There is the shorter and there's the longer one. So that's the second one. The third one is the Sutra on Buddha Amitayus. Not Amitabha, Amitayus. Now what's the difference? Amitayus, that means immeasurable life. Amitabha is immeasurable light, but Amitayus is immeasurable life, lifetime, longevity, one's life. In the Chinese language is Wuliang Shou Jing, immeasurable life sutra. So you see the difference? Everybody got this difference? Now, why do you have to know all these? Because then you know what literature, authentic literature are there to support the concept, to support the belief of going to heaven, giving you all the details of the when, the where, the how of going to heaven. Not just, I believe in the heaven, I believe in God, then after I die, then I go to heaven. Not that simple. Not just on blind faith. You have to work towards it. You have to apply your efforts to it. In other words, this concept of going to heaven is not just 100% reliance on a God. You have to, of course, there's 100% reliance on the Buddha, we call God, somebody called Buddha God. It does not make any difference. Name does not make any difference. But this here tells you in detail as to tell you that going to heaven, other than relying on the power of the supernatural being, somebody call it God, somebody call it Buddha, you name it, does not matter. Other than that, you still have to apply your own efforts to it. In other words, you have to work towards it. You have to be qualified for it. You have to make sure that all your conditions are made sure for going to heaven. It all contains in these 3 sutras in detail. Of course, there are 200 more sutras, not as detailed as this, that mention how to go to heaven, when, where, how, exactly what conditions you have to fulfill to go into heaven. Let me give you, for the rest of the 10 minutes before the gong goes, I'll give you just the 3 outlines, very brief outline on each sutra. The first one is the sutra on Amitabha Buddha, which is the smaller Sukhavativyuha by Max Muller. Now, one day the Buddha was staying at Sravasti, northeast India, together with 1,250 monks and many bodhisattvas. He began to address the audience headed by Sariputra, and he said there is in the western direction a Buddha land called Utmost Bliss, where the Buddha Amitabha presides in there. The land is full of wonders, pleasing to the mind and comforting to the senses, and those born there, they enjoy the highest spiritual bliss. People who were born there enjoy the highest spiritual bliss, which is the land of happiness, or heaven, some people call it. This land of bliss is totally free from suffering that we have in this present world that we're living in. Of course, you have to know what kind of suffering we're going through in this world. And there, in that land of bliss, there's no more suffering. The Buddha there is called Amitabha. At the same time, it's also called Amitayus, because his lifespan is immeasurable. It's also called Amitabha because his light shines out boundlessly. All beings there dwell in the stage of non-retrogression. What is that stage of non-retrogression? When you retrogress, that means you're going back to the 6 paths of reincarnation when you die. You retrogress in there. Non-retrogression, that means you're not going to be reborn again in the 6 paths of reincarnations. What are these 6 paths that usually people go to after death? There's 3 vicious paths and 3 beneficial paths, or non-vicious paths. What are these 3 vicious paths? Animal realm, the hell realm, and the ghost realm. If this person who passes away has very heavy karma, polluted karma, bad karma, he'll reincarnate into animal realm, ghost realm, or infernal realm, victims of hell. Now these are the 3 realms, vicious realms. There are the non-vicious realm, or more or less the virtuous realm, a human realm, Asura realm, and the heaven realm. Now this heaven realm is not the same as the heaven that we use in here. This heaven realm is still in the 6 paths of reincarnation. But this heaven realm, or the land of bliss, is a non-retrogressive realm. This heaven it's still a retrogressive realm, because after you live in there for a certain number of years, maybe thousands of years, you still have to go back to reincarnation. Now, the retrogressive realm in the land of Amitabha is, you don't go back to this 6 paths of reincarnation again. We, the common people, after we died, we usually roll into another path of reincarnation. Be human again, or in the animal realm, or in the ghost realm, or in the infernal realm, the hell realm. Most go into vicious realms. In other words, the animal realm, the ghost realm, and the hell realm. Why? Because most people committed a lot of bad karma. Also, these people who were born in the Amitabha's land of bliss, they were assured of attaining enlightenment. Why? Because who are their professors? The Buddha, the Bodhisattvas, the Arahats. They have all kinds of saintly fellow students in there. They have all kinds of saintly professors in there teaching them enlightenment. And enlightenment is a kind of mission that you should achieve. It's not a given thing. It's not the Buddha give you enlightenment, no such thing. You have to work towards it. It's your self-enlightenment. But you need a location, a place where you won't be bothered by anything. A place that you won't be bothered by your own karma, that you have all kinds of suffering, you have earthquake, you have tsunami, you have hurricanes, you have wars, you have sickness, death, aging. You don't have those anymore in there. You're free from those. But you're not the Buddha yet in there. You are just a student in there. But you've got to register first. You've got to register for admissions first. The sutra tells you how to register for the admission. So, in order to be born there, one must concentrate on Amitabha, holding fast to his name for 1 to 7 days. Then at the time of death, Amitabha, accompanied by a host of sages, appear before you and ensure your attainment of birth in the Pure Land at the juncture of death. Everybody has to die anyway. At that moment of death, it's extremely important as to where you would go next. You don't want to go into another hotel again. You don't want your soul to be rolled into a 5-star, a 4-star, a 3-star, or a bed and breakfast. Terrible, bed and breakfast only. So you want to make sure that you want to go to the land of bliss. Now, this sutra on Amitabha Buddha tells you what that world looks like, what that heaven, if you call it heaven, what that land of bliss looks like. So that is the detail in that smaller sutra. Now the next one is, I'm going to give you an outline of the sutra on the visualization of the Buddha of infinite life. There's another sutra. It's called Sutra on the Visualization of the Buddha of Infinite Life, maximally translated as the longer Sukhavativyuha Sutra. Now at one time the Buddha Sakyamuni Buddha was staying on the Vulture Peak together with 1,250 monks and 32,000 Bodhisattvas. Now, he was staying in there. Now, at that time there was a king. The king was called Bimbisara, incited by a man, not a virtuous man, called Devadatta, the son, the prince, Ajatasattu, the prince, imprisoned his father, King Bimbisara. It's in the history of India. In other words, the son, Ajata, imprisoned his own father and tried to kill his father so that he can be the king. So he first of all imprisoned King Bimbisara, and then later even the queen, Vaidehi, the queen was called Vaidehi. because the queen brought food to the king. So the son also imprisoned the mother. In utter despair, the queen, while at prison, requested the Buddha in her prayer, to help her out. The Buddha immediately sent 2 disciples to her, and afterwards, even the Buddha himself appeared in the prison where she was confined. Now, as she wished to be born in the land where there is no sorrow, no suffering, she didn't want to be in this world, because her son wanted to kill his own father, wanted to kill his own mother. So this is not a world worth living. So he requested the Buddha to be reborn again to another world. She didn't like this world anymore. This is a world of suffering. Even the son was going to kill his own father and his mother. So the Buddha showed her many Buddha lands to let her have a choice to choose. There's so many Buddha lands. Not just one Buddha, there's so many Buddhas. So she chose the Pure Land, Amitabha's land. So Vaidehi was thus able to visualize the Pure Land of the Amitabha. And for the sake of the later generations, the Buddha also expounded in the sutra the 16 ways of visualization. In other words, if every day you visualize using the 16 method of visualization in meditation, while you're meditating, you visualize that land, and at the time of death, your visualization will lead you to the land of bliss. We call it the 16 visualization. 16 Guan Cheng, 16 visualization. It's also called the 16 visualization sutra. So that's the second one. That's the longer. The shorter is the sutra on Amitabha Buddha. The longer is the sutra on the visualization, which Max Muller called the longer Sukhavativyuha. Now this last one outlined on the sutra of Amitayus Buddha. It's not the Amitabha now, it's called the Amitayus Buddha. Wuliang Shou Jing. So this sutra gives an account of the history of Amitayus. In other words, who is this Amitayu or Amitabha? Why did he become the Buddha? How? How about his life history? What leads him to have this land? What leads him to have this vow of trying to receive all the souls into that land of bliss? Many, many kalpas ago, there was, at the time of a Buddha called Lokitesvara Raja, there was a king, and he was called Dharmakara, Fa Zhang Bi Qiu. Fa Zhang, store of the Dharma, Dharmakara. He was a king, but he didn't want to be a king. He wanted to be a monk. And later he became a Buddha. Later he became a Buddha and he made 48 vows. And one of the most important vows is to receive all those who passed away into his land, the land of bliss, so that he won't reincarnate again. And in the land of bliss, he will receive the education of enlightenment and became a Buddha. So in there, it contains the history of Amitabha Buddha, how he became the Buddha, why he would like to become the Buddha. So that's a historical approach to this land of bliss concept. So I already have explained it to you, the 3 outlines of the 3 sutras. And in the next session, we should start with the sutra. We should start with, we would like to tackle this sutra word for word. Of course, I'll point out the most important words. This is not a long sutra. You have Chinese on one side and English on the other side. And I would explain it to you. But if you are learning Chinese, you can also, at the same time, read the Chinese version. But the Chinese version is in classical, ancient Chinese. It's not that easy. Okay, so I finished the outlines of the 3 sutras, and next time I'm going to get into the detail. What's the meaning of, thus it was heard by me? What does it mean? And every one of these, what does it mean by Bhagavate? What does it mean by by bhikshus. So we'll get into details next time.